this computer. So good. Welcome back. This is Faith and Cow. This is class number 277. So we're in Kislev, the month of miracles. We want some miracles. My mother is out of the hospital, but she is in rehab, and that's a difficult situation. Um, she has broken bones in her back and T4 and T5. And so it's very painful to move and sleep and a lot of other things. So improving, but let's all, this will be set in her zchus, this class, prepared for her class for Rochel Bas, Yehudas Bas Rochel, for Refuah Shlema and Pakarov and the complete and Refuah. So, and anybody else who needs a refuah in this community or other communities around. Today's class is going to, as usual, be relevant to the times, and the times, as the Alter Rebbe said, are not the New York Times, not the Los Angeles Times, but and not what you see on the news, but what is really the spiritual energy of this world, which is the Parsha of the week, which we just finished, which was Parsha's Toldos, which means generations. And the Rebbe in a Sikha explains and says that there's a statement of the rabbis, Chazal, that Masa Avos Siman Labanim, which means in plainer words, that which happens to happened to our forefathers is a sign for the children. Literally, it means a sign, meaning most people mean it means okay, fine.
My own computer.
The similar things that happen to.
Okay, thank you.
What? Okay, sorry, glad you're back. I'm not going to let. I'll mute you because I've already started the class.
Sorry.
Okay. No problem. So anyway, so it means, if you want to know about your life, go look at what was happening to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because they were our forefathers, and they very much what happened to them and the kinds of stories that they happened to them happened to us. Or another way to say it is, you want to figure out what your life is about and what's happening to you, and how do you survive and how do you thrive in the different challenges that a person has. You can look at the stories about what happened to our forefathers. And in it, you will see the struggles, the grief, the pains, the problems with children, the things that, that make up the color and the texture of our lives are in their lives. And so it's just every year, it doesn't fail. It just, you read it and you learn more about how to deal with what the things that we have to deal with are. So I can't tell you enough about what it is. So we're going to cover one idea from this last week's Parsha. It's because the Rebbe says it's not just they were a precursor for what happens to us, but it also gives us, he calls it an atinas koach, which means that it also gives us the answer and the ability and the clues for how to survive in this world and deal with our problems. So at the beginning of the Parsha, it talks about this is the generations of Yitzhak, and it says there was a famine right away at the very beginning. There was a famine in Israel, and Yitzhak decided that he was going to do like his father and go down to Egypt. Must be a sign that it's not a good place, not the time to settle in the land of Israel. And God came to him and told him, nope, not for you. It's okay for your father, maybe okay for your son Yaakov to go out of the country, but you need to stay in the land of Israel. Okay? So the first lesson that you get from that is as follows, that since he's our forefather, it's relevant to us, meaning that the ultimate place for a Jew is not Gullus and not dealing with all the problems of Gullus, but to be at the table of our Father in the land of Israel. That is the real home for a Jew, and it might be comfortable temporarily being outside. It may have some pleasures outside. It might seem nice, but ultimately it's a fragile existence outside the land of Israel, and the place of real stability and the real comfort and the real menuchas nefesh, tranquility that's a good word for it, is going to be in the land of Israel. May not look like it, but that's what it means. So, so it's interesting that the Rebbe is saying this. Lubavitch isn't, this doesn't sound like the group that's always jumping off to go to Israel. But the Rebbe does qualify it, and he says, so this is a message for Jews who live outside of Israel and those who live inside Israel in a state of galus. And I guess he's saying that, even in Israel, there's just a lot of gullus there too. It's not the time of Mashiach yet. And so it can feel actually very, very difficult and very hard actually inside of Israel. So it's not about a physical necessarily so much presence in Israel. It's ultimately being at our Father's table and everything taken care of. So that is the ultimate location for the Jew, is that, time of Mashiach and Jew is in Israel and everything is going well. All right. So then we have some work to do outside. But with that as an introduction, the preface, then we do have a question. So if that's what we're supposed to learn for the lives of our forefathers, you're only focusing on Yitzhak here. But Yitzhak had a father too, and Yitzhak's father went out of the land of Israel. So didn't Yitzhak have to learn from his father? And I think he looked like he was doing that too. And I think that's the question that Rebbe is saying in the Sikha is, I don't understand, if it's good enough for Abraham, why is it not good enough for Yitzhak? Okay, so now we're getting to some substance here. So the Rebbe's answer to this is that there are really two karyotypes, two templates for Jews, two classes of Jews. You can break them. They can break it up and use them into many groups. But okay, for the purposes of this talk, there are two, and the one is there are those who sit in yeshiva, they sit in a Jewish community, live in the Jewish community, work in the Jewish community, learn in the Jewish community, marry into the Jewish community. They're on the inside. That's the Yitzhak kind of person. He doesn't go outside. He doesn't deal so much with the outside world. Most of his focus is on dealing with building himself and building his community, building the people that he's related to in his marriage, the family, and so things of that sort. That's one mode for the Jewish people, and that's symbolized by Yitzhak. Avraham was the other way around. Avraham's mission was to bring the idea of one God to the world outside, reaching out. So he went to Egypt. He went to deal with Nimrod. He dealt with Lod. He dealt with Avimelech. He dealt with Haro. He dealt with a lot of He had to deal with a lot of, because it was an atheistic, idol worshiping world. And he dealt with Arabs who worshiped the dust on their souls, as the feet, and he made them all recognize Judaism.
No,
and that's
not Judaism.
Hashem.
One God.
One God. Thank you.
Welcome.
So that is part of the Jewish mission, to be able to, because we are a chosen people, and the world needs this message, and it's lost its message, and it's very confused. And our mission is, wherever we are, to try and bring a little bit of truth and understanding of what the reality of the world is, and they'll appreciate that. And that is the Avraham in us. If that's the case, it sounds like we got two completely different opposing views here. Which forefather do we go with? Are we supposed to be like Avraham, or are we supposed to be by Yitzchak? They're different. One is dealing with his tent, not going out of Israel, staying and learning, doing Torah mitzvahs, praying and deeply focusing on internal growth. And the other one is on the external. So the Rebbe says, not so quick, because they are both our forefathers. That means also that each one incorporates the other. The reason that Avram goes out into the world, you cannot just be focused externally, because if you're only focused externally, you lose juices. You don't build yourself up. So how can you influence anybody if you yourself are not working on yourself? So even the person who goes out into the world has to spend time isolating himself, focusing on only the Torah that he's learning, only on the prayers that he's doing, tune out the outside world, build oneself up. If you don't do that, then you will just be affected by and influenced by the outside world. And by the way, the same thing with the other person who's doing the inside work. the Rebbe says. It says this: if a person just says, I have only Torah and I only have mitzvahs and I only have my learning, then he has none of that because he's not doing acts of kindness with the outside world. So the whole point of sitting and learning and learn in Torah is not to be isolated, but in order to be able to develop the ability to influence the outside world. So you're doing this, but you're doing it with the idea that you're not going, it is not only a personal thing, it's not just an egocentric thing, and it's not a self-centered narcissistic thing. It is all about trying to help other people. So on both sides incorporate each other. And that's why they're both our forefathers. But now we still have another problem, another thing that the Rebbe points out that we need to learn from this parsha. And that is, it says that this is the generations, these are the offsprings of Yitzhak. And it doesn't seem like it's really talking about the offsprings of Yitzhak. It's talking about Yitzhak's avoda, about digging wells and praying, and not about his son who had to go off into the world, and not about his father. So, there's something slightly not congruous. There's something that needs to be figured out here. How does this relate to everybody? And not only that, but we have a statement from the rabbis who says that in the time of Mashiach, we're going to refer to primarily as Yitzhak as our father. More than Avraham and more than Yaakov. Yitzhak is really who we are. So let's open that one up and try and understand that a little bit. So there is an interesting prophecy by Eliyahu, by I think Yeshayahu, who talks about the time of Mashiach and says, in the time of Mashiach, the non-Jews will be streaming to Israel to learn about the Judaism from the Jews, to learn about what God is from the Jews. And they will all come, and they will come to praise Hashem. All the Goyim will praise Hashem, and they will all come to the Har Hashem, the mountain of Hashem, and they will be impressed, and they will serve Hashem. They will all be looking towards to Israel, the way they do right now. They think I heard somebody, he says, you don't realize that from the outside world, one of the reasons why anti-Semitism is so big right now is because they think we're a superpower. We knocked off 5 different enemies, one after the other, and and it's just not normal. The way that we got rid of Lebanon, we got rid of, it just seems like it's a magical thing. So part of they're trying to all knock Israel down is because they're scared that somehow we're going to take over for them. Well, we're not. We're supposed to influence them. We're not running their lives. Okay, but that's the anti-Semitism of the thing. But there is a certain sense of that all the nations are looking at us constantly. We're just in the news day and night. So, but the Rebbe raises a question. If that's the case, if they're all coming by themselves and they're all coming to Israel and they're all coming to learn from the Jews, so what's the Jewish role in this whole thing anymore? I mean, Rambam says that it's one of the missions of a Jew is to influence the world to keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. But if they want to do it already, what are we doing? How are we influencing them to keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, the 7 commandments that are given to Noah? How do we do that if they're coming by themselves already? So he says, well, that's the lesson of Yitzchak's life. That's what Yitzchak showed, is that, there is a time where you have to go out of the land of Israel and go out of the Torah world and go and learn the language that they speak and explain things to them and so forth on their terms. But when you do that, when Avraham did it, and Avraham did have an effect, but Avraham's effect on people in Egypt and in the rest of the world did not make them his children. He influenced them. They started to becoming monotheistic, but they didn't become literally his generations. But when you are an living example and you work on yourself internally and you develop yourself and the people come to you to find out about Judaism, then they're on your turf, not on their turf. And you can have a deeper effect and a deeper influence on them because they're already interested and want to find out. You're not trying to explain things in their terms. You're explaining things in our terms to them, and they get it, and they come and they want to listen. And that's why this is called Toldos, because Yitzhak really symbolizes the Jew in the time of Mashiach, where he will not have to necessarily so much engage in the outside world. His whole occupation will be to learn the Torah of Hashem. He will spend his whole days and his nights learning Torah and teaching Torah. And the world will come and they will come to listen because they'll say, this is something amazing and this is something fantastic. And that is why Yitzhak in the time of Mashiach will be called our father. And that's why this parsha is called Todos, because ultimately that is the idea of the Jew. The Jew has a role in the time of Gullus in being involved in the rest of the world. But as we come time of Mashiach, it's going to be more and more focused on an inner growth, an inner struggle, an inner prayer, an inner example. And that actually, I heard Emanuel Friedman saying, yeah, that's why it's so pathetic that Jews try and constantly water down Judaism to try and influence someone else. We really have to say it like it is, because the world is ready for that at this point in time. And they're ready to hear this about the Jew. And we're not supposed to necessarily be scared of all these anti-Semites out there. You just say, you're so pathetic. It's 2,000 years you've been trying to wipe us out, and you never did it anyway. 3,000, 4,000 years. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Haven't you learned your lesson yet? And so forth. The Jewish people are eternal. We have a mission from God. And therefore, we don't have to be running away from where we are, our countries, or anything. They want to hear from us, and we can influence them. And it's when a Jew then it shows himself as not being afraid and being strong and being focused on what he has to do rather than letting them control the agenda with their fake news. Then we actually have our influence in the world. And with that, I think that was a good lesson for the times we live in. It's a parsha is alive. It's very relevant to what we're doing today. And it's a lesson for us, too, of who we are and the power that was given to us by our fathers and forefathers and foremothers. Right? They're very strong in this parsha too. Rivka, Leah, and so forth. And I'll let my wife speak from the woman's viewpoint on this. Okay.
Is that okay to ask you a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think questions
Okay.
are about.
Are you on recording? Are you on recording?
I can pause the recording. Yes. You want me to pause? Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Recording back in progress. Okay. Thank you. That was wonderful. What's the question?
Yeah. Thank you. So, before I begin, are there any more questions?
No.
Okay, good. So, okay. So I'm going to start with the 4 things that I always say, and then I'm going to tell a story to address what Golda just asked. So anyway, the 4 things I always say are, number 1, we're in an extraordinary time. And why do I say it's extraordinary? Because the Lubavitcher Rebbe told us that we're in the unfolding of the redemption. He told us that in 1991 and the end of 1991. Really this month, in the 20th of Kislev in 1991. And number 2, and the Rebbe was never wrong about any public pronouncement that he made, no matter how logic defying those pronouncements were. Number 2, you and I were handpicked, all of us. We were handpicked to be here right now, not as bystanders, but because each one of us has a critical role to play. Number 3, we were given all the tools to carry out this important mission. It's really a mission. A mission is a big job, and we were given the Torah, which is our guidebook, and we were given the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. They transform the world, and they transform us also. The most powerful self-transformation tools that exist are the mitzvahs, and we were given modern day leaders who are in touch with what's happening now, and who are explaining the current scene according to Torah guidelines. And finally, what we're doing tonight, learning about Mashiach, the Rebbe told us that's the best way to actively advance it. Learning about it pushes the process forward. So more than anything else. So Golda asked a great question. We're tired. We're tired. We want that final scene that we've been promised. We don't want to have more episodes. We want the wonderful world that we were promised, the world of peace and harmony and all that stuff. So this story, Haskell Shemin, who was the rabbi that started Sivas Hashem? It's Sivas Hashem. He's married to the woman. He's married. No, he's married to the woman who gave me Kala classes.
What?
He's married to the woman who gave me Kala classes.
Pape?
Pape, yeah. Okay, so this is Rabbi Shalom Pape. He told the story, and Rabbi Shalom Pape was, maybe still is, in charge of Sivas Hashem, which is Sivas Hashem is like the army of children that through their mitzvahs, they are advancing Mashiach. They're a very important role in the Rebbe's army. So and in Hashem's army. So anyway, this is a story he told at a gathering to explain why children are so important in this whole role of this last epoch of when we're changing over into a much better world. And he told a story, and he said the story is a fable, and the story goes like this: there was a good king, and it's the story of human history actually. There was a good king and a wicked king, and the wicked king was terrible. He was so wicked. He did so many terrible things, and the good king couldn't stand it. So he gathered an army, and they rode over there, and they attacked the kingdom of the bad king. And they made a little headway and stuff like that, but the losses were too magnificent, too horrendous, too huge, and too big of a scale. And the good king had to just give up and go home. And then the bad king got even worse. It was even more horrendous. And the good king couldn't stand it anymore. And he raised another army and went over with his second army. And they put on a mighty, mighty battle. But the walls around the wicked king's kingdom were just impenetrable, huge and impenetrable. And they suffered heavy losses, and they had to come back home. And the same thing happened the third time. The good king couldn't stand it anymore. There was so much evil coming from there. And he gathered the remnants of whoever he could find and went to fight the bad king. And those walls wouldn't budge. He couldn't manage, and there were heavy losses. And he came back. And years went by, and the good king tried to satisfy himself with the status quo. But the bad king was getting so awful, it's unbelievable. And so the good king said, I can't take it anymore. And he looked around, and there was no one left to be in the army. There was no big men left. There was nothing. And so he did what he had to do. And he gathered kids. He made an army of kids, and he brought them over to the wicked king's kingdom. And they pushed on the walls, and the walls came tumbling down. Why did the walls come tumbling down? Because what nobody had noticed over the course of the years is that each of those battles did make a difference. Each of those battles had made cracks in the wall, not apparent cracks, but there were cracks in the wall. The first battle, the second battle, the third battle. So when the kids came, all there was to do was give a small push. And the bad king's kingdom, the walls came crashing down, and they won against the bad king's kingdom, and the bad king was forever routed from his kingdom. It is an analogy for our time. It means that all those wars, all those campaigns, all those mitzvahs that were done over the years, they didn't not have an effect. They had an effect. And the next generation's mitzvahs, they had an effect. And the next generation's mitzvahs, they had an effect. The walls look terrible. It looks like evil is so dominant. It's unbelievable. But it's not true. There are cracks everywhere. And we are going to see the whole edifice fall. you know, I've mentioned this before. Like the Arab world was at one time a monolith, no cracks. You couldn't. Nobody could say anything. No Arab could say anything against the Arabs. You would. It would be the end. And and then something changed in like the 1990s when social media started, and Arab teenagers started uh, they started to, you know, do all these comments, and it went through. It went through, and Arabs stood up in the UN and said, you know, people started from within the Arab world. There were cracks, and people stood up and they said, "Why are you yelling at Israel? Israel is the only one who helps the Palestinians. The Arabs do not help us at all. They use us as a ploy, and they don't help us one bit. The money that is supposed to go to us goes to big, fat, wealthy Arabs. It doesn't go to us at all. The only people who help us are the Israelis. So why are you doing BDS? It's not helping us. You have to help Israel because they're the only ones that are helping us. There are cracks in the walls. And in the United States, there are cracks. There are cracks all over. And we are going to, you know, and so it looks like we're never going to win this thing. It's never going to be over. But if we push on the walls with our few little meager last mitzvahs, we are going to see those walls crumble because the walls already have cracks all over. We are not dealing with a monolith anymore. So, anyway, um, uh, you know, my friend, I wish she continued it. My friend had a marvelous website. You can still find it. It's called redemptionwatch.blogspot.com. And she put all sorts of things of the walls crumbling, what Arabs are saying, what people are coming out for Israel. And and you know, it's I really, really, really wish she would continue it, but the walls are cracking and we are going to see progress. We're not going to see progress. We're going to see the final era. So
It
so
would be nice if you email us this website,
okay, I will.
but I will try to find.
Pardon? Yeah.
If you email would be great.
I'll
The
do,
website.
I'm gonna do it. Okay, let me just write it down here and I'm gonna do it. Don't yeah. Okay, right after class. So okay. And if you like it, you can drop her a note on the website and tell her, please continue this. This is so exciting. You know, I tell her, but other people have to tell her. So anyway, so you know, did I speak last week? I don't think I spoke last week about Rosh Chodesh Kislev because Rosh Chodesh Kislev was just this Friday, and Rosh Chodesh Kislev was in you know, in 1977 on 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 Shmini Atzeres. You know, the Rebbe would be. What did the Rebbe do on the day before, the morning before Shmini Atzeres, which is Hoshana Rabbah? The Rebbe would stand for hours giving out honey cake to whoever came. He would give out honey cake for hours and hours and hours. And then on Shmini Atzeres, the Hasidic custom, the Chabad custom, is that you dance not only on Simchas Torah but also on the day before on Shmini Atzeres. And so there would be dancing until like 2 in the morning, about 3 in the morning, and it was a very lively thing. And something happened that Shmini Atzeres in 1977. The Rebbe, who usually like encouraged the danced himself and encouraged the dancing with great vigor, people saw him. He was leaning on his table, leaning on his stender, and it didn't look normal. And some people noticed, and they said, Rebbe, sit down. Rebbe, sit down. And the Rebbe didn't want to sit down. And he even danced after that. And I don't know if he danced for the Torah or just danced, but it became clear that there was something wrong with the Rebbe. And then people started yelling out, The Rebbe's not feeling well. Something's wrong with the Rebbe. Everybody clear out. Give him air. There could be like 10,000 people packed into 770 on that holiday. It's the most, Shmini Atzeret Simchas Torah have always been wild crowds. And people cleared out, and people even broke the windows. So they have huge windows there, and people even broke the windows to give the Rebbe air. And they persuaded the Rebbe, and the Rebbe went to his office, and his secretaries, his secretaries are like four rabbis, and they said, Rebbe, something's wrong. You have to go to the hospital. There were doctors, in any Jewish crowd, you're going to find a lot of doctors. So there were doctors on the scene. Just a second, I'm going to get my water. There were doctors on the scene. And the doctor said, Rebbe, we think you had a very big heart attack. And more doctors arrived, and they wanted the Rebbe to go to the hospital. The Rebbe said, I am staying here. This is the place I need to be. I need to be in 770. The hospital's not going to be for me at all. And this is the place where I get my strength. And one of his secretaries, Rabbi Groner, said to the Rebbe, if the Rebbe won't go to the hospital, can we bring the hospital to the Rebbe? Can we bring equipment here? And the Rebbe said, yes. And somehow the word got out to Hasidim. And if you can imagine this, it was Yontif. It was a day where you don't touch money. You don't do anything like that. Hasidim heard that the Rebbe needed a hospital set up in his office in 770, and they ran home, and they came running with bags full of cash, and anything that could be sold. They came with tons of money. Here, buy whatever you need. And within short order, they had a lot of equipment in 770. And they had there was a doctor a frum guy, a frum cardiologist. They called him because on Yontif you can do anything to save. You can do whatever you need with electronics, etc., to save a life. And so they called a doctor in Chicago, and he knew who it was from, and he picked up a young cardiologist. He packed a bag, got himself a plane ticket, got on the plane. Got all on Yontif, got off the plane in New York from Chicago. Yeah, it's true. Okay, got off the plane in Chicago, and not Chicago, in New York. The police were waiting for him at the airport, and they rushed him to 770. And meanwhile, the doctors who were already there, they were busy setting things up, and they told the Rebbe, we can see already that not only did you have a massive heart attack, but there's even a bigger one on the way. Probably sometime in the middle of the night, you're going to have a heart attack that's even bigger than what you had. Rebbe, you're not going to survive unless we put you to sleep. If we put you to sleep, your body will have more resources to handle the heart attack. Can we put you asleep? And the Rebbe said, no, you can't put me to sleep, because I know if you put me to sleep, you're going to take me to the hospital, and I don't want to go. And they said, Rebbe, if we're going to promise. And so they promised, and the Rebbe let them give him an injection to put him to sleep. And that's what happened. And by then the Rebbitzin was notified. She walked to 770. And they told her what's going on, and they said, Rebbitzin, if you tell us we can bring him to the hospital, we're going to listen to you, and we're not going to listen to him. She said these famous words. She said, in my 50 years of being married to this man, I have never made him upset, and I'm not going to begin now. It's like, woo! An amazing, amazing answer. And so they left the Rebbe there. Anyway, the Rebbe weathered the second heart attack, which was bigger than the first. They were massive, massive, massive heart attacks. I think half his heart was destroyed easily. And that's something I heard. And but still, he's Hashem gave him an unbelievable body. He was um, he was 75 at that time, and he weathered both heart attacks. And he was able, like if he had to use the facilities, he didn't. He got up and he walked himself. And he's just like an unusual. All the not all the Rebbes, a lot of the Rebbes were like that. And what did the Rebbe do when they told the Rebbe, after the Rebbe started getting better, and and they told the Rebbe, if you continue to live the lifestyle that you've been living, extraordinarily little sleep, like 3 hours, and 3 hours a night, and dealing with everybody's problems in the world, and working such a hard schedule, such a packed, difficult schedule with so many huge responsibilities, it's likely there's a 25% chance this will happen all over again, and it could be worse than this time, and you might not, and you there's a good chance you will not survive. And the doctor who said that to him said, Rebbe, did you hear what I said? And the Rebbe said, absolutely. I heard what you said. You said that if I do nothing different than what I'm doing now, giving all my power to the Jewish people to do whatever needs to be done, I have a 75% chance of survival. That's good news. So that the Rebbe always encouraged us to think positively about every situation that we're in. And once you go the other way, when you start heading down, it's extremely hard to turn around and head back up. But we can do it. But it's the Jewish expression is tracht gut wird sein gut, think good and it will be good. And there's a story about this. It's a very famous story. Maybe you've heard it. Very famous story. I don't know what year it was. It was the Rebbe was. Oh, by the way, the Rebbe. Why is Rosh Chodesh Kislev a big day? Because this is the day that the Rebbe Rosh Chodesh Kislev is the day that the Rebbe recovered sufficiently to walk out of 770. He looked great, and to come home. I want to tell you that even it was 2 days. I believe it was 2 days. It might even have been a day and a half after the heart attack. The Rebbe begged the doctors for permission to speak to his Hasidim, and they allowed it because he told them how important it was to him. And he spoke for like 2.5 minutes on a loudspeaker from his office, and it was projected, not an image, but a voice. It was projected into 770, where everybody was there gathered to listen. And it was, the Rebbe was Rebbe is like this with the Hasidim, and he didn't want to leave them alone with their worries. And you could tell he went through a massive thing. The Rebbe was teary in his talk, but what a gibor, what a strong person, and how committed to the Jewish people. And so anyway, the Rebbe urged us throughout. He urged everybody, whatever situation you're in, you have to look at it positively. That's the way a chassid manages. I once heard Rabbi Paltiel say that normally people look at the world and they see danger and they see lacking. That's what people see when they look at the world. They see that it's a precarious kind of place and that it's missing a lot of things. And Hasidus teaches the opposite, that the world is not precarious. The world is exactly in Hashem's hands, and he knows exactly what he's doing. And the world is not missing things. The world has everything it needs to carry on in the way that it has to carry on. So I like to remember that definition, that a chassid does not see the world as precarious and does not see the world as missing major things. He sees the world as very secure because it's in Hashem's hands and not missing anything. So, and that's the way the Rebbe looked. He said, oh, I'm happy. I have a 75% chance of survival. This is the famous story. involving the Rebbe. There was when he was well. I don't know if it was before or after the heart attack. By the way, the Rebbe resumed his crazy schedule and lived like a powerhouse, just a powerhouse. So there was a guy, Avraham Rottenberg, reminds me of Avi Rottenberg's name, but it wasn't Avi Rottenberg. A guy named Avraham Rottenberg. He was a religious Jew. He was not a Chabadnik, but he lived in the neighborhood and he had established a close relationship with the Rebbe. And he was Israeli. And one day he got, this was a long, long time ago when there was no, way before the internet, way before cell phones, way before, I remember the times when a call to Israel was almost unthinkable. It was so expensive. And it was in those times. And you couldn't even always get through. So you'd have to have certain, there had to be enough lines or whatever. It's hard to imagine today for some people, but that's the way it was. So this was in those times. And he got a call from his family one day that your father has already been in ICU for 4 days. He had a massive something. I don't know if it was a stroke or a heart attack. He's totally unconscious and his life is hanging by a thread. And he's been like that for 4 days. And after he hung up the phone, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He was going to write. He wrote a letter to the Rebbe, and it was just like stream of consciousness writing. He said, Rebbe, I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know what to think. It's a horrible situation. I don't know what to think. And he sent the letter exactly like that to the Rebbe's office. And he got an answer that evening. It was on a Thursday, and he got an answer that evening. And the Rebbe said, you don't know what to think? You don't, our Chabad rabbis, our Chabad Rebbeim taught us, tracht gut, wird sein good. Think good, and it will be good. And he said, you have to start thinking good about the situation, and then it will be good. That was the whole answer. And so the guy got the message, he got it, and he thought, think good, it's terrible, it's a horrible, precarious thing. He's not conscious. His life is apparently hanging by a thread. And then he said, but this is what the Rebbe said. This is my answer. And so he said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm expecting good. I'm expecting good. And then 3 days later, he was outside somewhere and the Rebbe saw him. And the Rebbe said, no, is there any good news? And he said, yes, I just got a call from Israel. My father's completely out of danger. The crisis is past, and he's getting better and better. And it's so wonderful, Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, no, and when did the crisis pass? Can you tell me? And he said, yeah, I can tell you that too. I can tell you that too. My family said that Thursday evening, something happened and things started turning for the better. And the Rebbe said, and can you tell me, when did you start thinking good about the situation? And he thought back and he said, Thursday evening. That's when I started thinking good. I have an even more dramatic story than that. But I have to get my friend's permission about turning around a situation by simply expecting good. And I'm doing it all the time now because when I didn't have a voice, it was, as I said before, it was incredibly hard for me because I had the guilt of not teaching in school. And even when I came back with a partial voice, I had the guilt of not being able to teach on the level and with the complexity of concepts, because I was sparing my voice. I have a very big problem with guilt. And I love teaching so much, and I want to give them everything that I have. So guilt and wonderment about what is happening. Why don't I have my voice back? What's going on already? And I went to see doctor after doctor, and my emotions started tipping downhill. And then I saw, Shlomo, see, this is not the way you're going to go. I've told you this before, but when my mother passed away shortly afterwards, boom, in my head, I got 10 rules of managing life for Shlomo Yehuda's good friend. And the first rule is I don't question Hashem. I don't question Hashem and his love for me. I just don't do it. And so I turned around. Life didn't change overnight, but I did. And I am so much happier. It's not to be believed. And challenges still come, and I jump over them by thinking good. I jump over them. So anyway, I'm going to end here. And if you have a question, I can take it. And then I'm going to get off shortly because I have a lot to do. Okay. Thank you so much.